Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Is it smoke show at 8 o'clock in the morning?
It is a smoke show. It's Vegas.
Nice.
We're here to have some fun.
It is Vegas.
Well, it's great to be here, Dave. Just a quick introduction. We're going to unpack the current state of supply chain for all of you, and just introduce ourselves. You know, as Pam said, I'm the Chief Research Officer with 0100. We're a data and research company for Chief Supply Chain, Chief Operating Officers, and I'm here with my very good friend, and arguably one of the greatest minds you're ever going to come across in supply chain, Dave Clark, with whom I spent a few years at Amazon, to unpack the state of supply chain today. So Dave, just a quick, word about yourself and how we've done this in the past and how much fun it is to get in front of an audience.
Yeah, so I'm super happy to be here. This is like my favorite people in the world, although I did tell my family not to order anything this week because clearly nothing is getting done. Nothing's getting delivered or shipped because everybody that does anything is here. No, happy to be here. I spent 23 years at Amazon. I love supply chain, love the people who do the work, and that's why we founded Augur, is to go out and try to help those folks. So
it's a great chance to talk. This event has blown my mind, frankly. This is my first time at Manifest, I hate to admit it. And one of the things we've seen a ton of is robots, and some really impressive and compelling robots out there. But the thing I'm wondering about, and Dave, this is the first question, is where are all the humanoid robots? I mean, it seems like we got to have those.
You're trying to provoke me now. Kevin knows that the thing that I don't understand the most in operational robots is why we keep talking about humanoid forms. I was really actually happy to see that there weren't a bunch of humanoids over there. I think one, it scares the shit out of people to be working next to a thing that looks like them. I mean, some of those big humanoids are way scarier than like a big industrial robot. And so I'd rather not, I think that's not helpful. And also, I think if I were redesigning my own form, if I could make it ideal, I probably wouldn't have like 2 arms and feet. Like wheels and maybe a third arm or a fourth arm.
Just the good parts.
Some eyes, some in the back of my head. And so I don't know, I sort of think the humanoid thing is a bit of it's a great way to make your TAM sound really good to a VC. It's like, my TAM is all humans. Like, I have a humanoid, so every human can be replaced with it. But robots is a huge deal. I think there's some really interesting stuff over there. The most interesting things, I think, are getting to AI and compute at the edge, like the NVIDIA GPU units that you can now use sort of at the production point to power a much richer model set, sort of at the edge, wherever the physical work's being done. I think you're going to continue to see that price drop, and I think the robotics component of this over the next decade is going to be pretty wild.
Yeah, actually chasing that price drop question a little bit, I think this audience has a view, but also cares. How steeply do you think it can drop, and what does it look like if that drop that you're imagining, we're both kind of thinking of, really kicks in?
I think you have 2 things. One, you've got price drop that's been happening in compute, in less in hardware, but more in the compute and processing side. And you've also had a big steep rise in labor costs, over the last 6 or 7 years. And those 2 things are working together to make it a really, much, much more viable to add robotics much further down the labor stack than what it was, 10 years ago.
And actually, by the way, Dave threw a question onto LinkedIn, and I think quite a few of you responded, what should we talk about when we're unpacking supply chain? One of the questions I thought was really interesting, and I think this might have been John Battles' question. It was a 17-part, 500-word question, so I'm not going to recap it.
Yeah.
But the question was tying robotics in this declining cost curve and the rising cost of labor to the tariffs question. And I guess that opens up the topic of the day, tariffs. What do you think about how automation and the shifting economics of what we're all doing here is going to evolve in the face of this bumpy universe of tariffs that's now on the table?
Well, tariffs are definitely job security for supply chain people. Just another, throw all the cards up on the table and start over again. I don't know, I think if I separate them into 2 parts, how I think about it as a supply chain person versus as a citizen, I think much of what's happening in tariffs today is largely negotiation factor, negotiating position with other countries. There's a clear strategy of set the promise out there way deep and then pull back to something that's more like what you really want. And we do have a tariff structure that's out of whack with a lot of other countries. de minimis did need to stop, right? Like de minimis, the idea that China is treated as a third world country inside the postal regulations is a little bit of a stretch. So from my opinion, like some of those things are good. From a supply chain side, I think the methodology of like, hey, we're going to do this tomorrow or next week, and the constant flux, just given how hard it is for people to get to the data, to get to the structures, to figure out what their tier 2, 3, 4, 5 suppliers are doing, it's a very big machine to try to move that adaptively.
Yeah.
And in a world of AI, I imagine a lot of C-suites are coming and saying, why can't you give me the answer this afternoon instead of next week or 2 weeks from now? And so I think there's the mechanism of how it's happening is creating a lot of foobar action across the supply chain and a lot of variability that's unnecessary. But the direction, I think, at some point needs to happen. So.
Yeah, and I feel like the foobar, the sort of all this aggravation and noise, actually has a silver lining. One of the pieces of data that we turned up in sort of digging into the tariffs question for 0100 members is a fair amount of what's out there can be negotiated your way out of. It is a deal-making environment. In fact, something like
even within 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. You get a deal quickly if you're Mexico.
Yeah, if you threaten enough, you get.
But you can talk your way out of these things. In fact, 15% of all the exclusions that were applied for during the first Trump presidency were granted. So don't just sit back as a supply chain person and try to answer questions. Actually get in there and explain how many jobs are at risk and how important you are to this congressional district. And you have a shot at getting out of these things.
Yeah. Well, and it'll get when Canada's the 51st state, it will get a lot easier. The trade there will be much simpler.
Well, they in Greenland, it's going to be a great fun operation, right?
Panama Canal is going to be great.
Anyway, it's a crazy deal-making environment.
We can use in Greenland.
Well,
Canada will get maple syrup like way quicker and cheaper.
Yeah, Dave, I think you got to get back in charge of all of this stuff.
Apologies to the Canadians in the house.
I want to go sideways on you. DeepSeek.
Yeah.
So it kind of whacked NVIDIA for a little while, rattled the markets a little bit, but they seem to have come back a bit. I have a view, but what's your thought about DeepSeek and the implications for this AI movement that we're all riding on?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's do I wish it was a U.S. company that had like popped out a model at so first I would say I ignore all it cost us $5 million to build or whatever. Like that to me is not the important part. That's sort of the hyperbole. The important part is the actual shifts in the model that allow you to be dramatically more efficient in the amount of compute and the amount of data you need to actually run the model. So the actual costs of running the model are dramatically cheaper, and the results are still quite good relative to a paid model, and it's all open source.
Yeah.
I think we were very much on this path of GPU, and it was just like this insane curve of like just throw money at the problem, and we needed a bit of a reset on no. Like if you really want this to propagate broadly, you're going to have an open source set of solutions. You're going to have a much lower cost model. You got to be able to use, not everybody in this room can go buy the latest stack of NVIDIA GPUs to run supply chain models on. And so that was a big shift to the positive.
Yeah.
I don't know why it surprised a bunch of people. This is what typically happens in the curve.
That's my biggest question, is why it was so surprising.
I think it was just, it took people a couple days to go, oh, well, if it's cheaper, we'll just use a lot more of it.
Yeah.
And then I think that's why it reset.
Yeah.
That's the normal pattern of events. Things are expensive. The things that can support using really expensive things use it first. They work it really well. Then you get a cheaper model, and then everybody else starts to use it. And then usage goes way up, and then everybody profits off the mass usage.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic that we're hitting there.
It's the playbook of any sort of scaled technology application to our business, and very much the way that Amazon grew what's the mega fulfillment system we all don't know today was just a little bit more efficient, a little bit more quick, a little bit more logical.
You get a little more efficient, and then you find an unlock that creates a step function. Like I think DeepSeek unlocks a step function. So we have been building on OpenAI as a base of a model, and then we flipped and fired up a stack of DeepSeek and to run in parallel to compare models, and so we now have a solution that's dramatically cheaper and produces roughly the same outcome for supply chain analytics overnight. And it's not a, it's not a risk really relative to China because it's an open source model. You run the model on your data and your hosts, so it really doesn't matter where it came from. And this whole this whole well, they stole it. Well, I mean, where do you think OpenAI got the data from?
Yeah, exactly. It's also not
everybody's
unique.
doing that.
I think it's the logical continuation of a trend to try to learn how to make more out of less. And it's not the only thing. I mean, Alibaba had a very similar model that came out like a week later, didn't get anywhere near the press. It was arguably even better. And I think it's actually been good for AWS and entities that are out there really trying to bring AI to the masses, basically because they're going to be able to get more out of the investment in that learning technology.
Well, I mean, it just doesn't. You can't just keep building new GPUs every year and have nobody to use the old ones. And so you need to add new users that want a lower cost GPU solution and lower cost processing model, because they're running. Most of the time you don't need the global corpus of data for the entire internet in the world. Most of the solutions that everybody in this room is going to want to work on are actually more like small language models. You need a lot less data. You need a lot less compute. And you don't need you need a structure of a model that allows you to be much more flexible, use a lot less energy, use a lot less compute, and be able to buy the second tier or third tier processing capabilities of Azure or AWS or whoever. And that's going to be a big unlock for people. Like right now, it's just super expensive. Like if you want to run your demand plan through, an LLM on the regular today, like that's a lot of money. The compute drain on that because of the cost of the GPUs you run is high. Versus, we see dramatically more efficient runs on a DeepSeek, and on a cheaper chip stack.
So this is all really infrastructure and enablement and the fundamentals of enabling this whole thing to occur. We had a bunch of questions in response to your LinkedIn post about agents, agentic AI, and I guess the question I'm going to want to ask here, because I'm distilling a bunch of your questions, is how do I think about agents as a capability in application when I'm trying to basically improve the performance of my supply chain operations? Pick your piece. How to think about agents as a capability?
Well, I think agents are a big unlock. I think the big challenge probably for most of the folks in this room and most of the people I talk to is, my data is still not good enough to use it. Unfortunately, one of the top topics at every day of every supply chain session around the world is always data. How do I get my data organized and clean, and how do I get it for 2 to 3 layers of the stack? But if you are fortunate enough to have that, then the agents are really interesting. If you didn't see the OpenAI operators announcement, I would highly encourage you to go watch the presentation from that and the videos of it, because what they show is sort of the interesting use case of going on Airbnb and booking basically booking a stay where you put in what you want to happen, and then the agent takes control basically of your keyboard and your mouse and populates that, and he gets it through the process to be able to place the order. I think it's reimagine that example now with that long tail of data you're getting from suppliers, where the only place you can get it is a web UI, where you're logging into that carrier or that WMS or that system, and you don't have an API, you don't have the data structure, where now you could actually have an agent go in the front door, basically have trained it on the UI, and then have it extract the data you want from the system, and then come back and put that data back in the way you want it, and this is sort of a Uber assistant to the operator. And that sort of continuous, this is actually what we're working on, but that continuous movement of getting from the data back to the input, and doing that without having to have hardened APIs and technical infrastructure in place, because so many of those tools don't have them, is I think the biggest agentic unlock from my point of view.
I'm going to chase the data question, because that was also something a lot of you asked about, and we have this constantly on the table. And here's the question. Okay, data as a product is a phrase we find resonates for folks who are platforming the data. I think I'm quoting you on that phrase. A lot of folks are wrestling with how to get the right amount of data to get started versus trying to have everything under the sun clean and perfect. And it's an ongoing process of obviously governing that data. How should people think about getting going with data at a robust enough level you can begin to use and learn from this versus trying to basically solve everything and then start?
Yeah, the way I would frame it is I think the data is, if you think about it as like at the core, and the financial infrastructure is where the data is the cleanest, right? It's highly structured, it's usually factually correct, it's high fidelity. And the closer out from that financial center to the physical edge, wherever the production's happening, the delivery's happening, the materials are being sourced, the data gets progressively worse. And by worse, I largely mean unstructured. Sometimes it's wrong, but most of the time it's an email, it's a spreadsheet, it's a PDF, it's a Slack, it's some other form of unstructured or data that's out of a format aligned with the other. And I think supply chains have been fighting this in the form of standards for a very long time. And my point of view on this is I think it's time to move beyond standards because I just don't think they will ever work. Because as soon as you get standards in this one supplier, you've grown or a tariff has come in or something else and you add 3 more suppliers and those suppliers aren't on the standards. And so you're like always missing a big chunk of that data and you oftentimes don't have a way to pull it back. So we had this, when Amazon launched FBA, I put it in a physical context. We used to get inventory in and we used to get inventory from real suppliers. And it was like, full pallet, it was clean, it was stacked nice, it was all same number of units in a box. And then we got FBA sellers, you basically got a moving box, which was just like, it looked like people just had like a funnel and filled a Lowe's moving box full of shit and taped it up and sent it in. And for probably 6 months to a year, we spent a lot of time like debating how do you do standards back to this. And then you realize if you really want this to grow, you have to be a garbage disposal for inbound. Like your inbound dock just has to take it all. Doesn't matter. Can't stop. Can't figure. You just got to automate it, figure it out, get all the data to work. And I think the same is true now in the way we're going to fix the data infrastructure and supply chain, which is you just got to build a system that is a garbage disposal. Take it however it comes. If it comes from SAP or if it comes from a barge web UI from some person in Louisiana, or it's a spreadsheet in Chinese in Mandarin from somewhere overseas. You got to take it how it is, ingest it, and then make it aligned so you can operate off of it.
Good analogy.
I think the sooner we get to that, that's the only way I think we really get past it.
I love the analogy, and I think it's actually the right attitude to hurry up on this stuff and get going. Listen, we're a little tight on time. I want to do a couple of quick yes or no, not quite yes or no, but A or B answers.
You expect me to only answer with yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. First one.
It's testing me hard.
Testing. AI.
Yeah.
Glorified intern or game changer?
Both.
Awesome. Okay, why?
Well, I think the way we currently use it, it's kind of glorified intern.
Yeah.
It's great. I use it all the time. I use all the different models, and they're all like different personalities, and like whatever you kind of know how they react to different sets of data.
Yeah.
But I'm not running I'm not like running on it. I think what we will build over the next few years will be transformative in a way that a lot of the stuff that, especially for this group, I think the stuff that we as a group spend a lot of time in minutia and just trying to get things together and get into fields and capture and like you'll be able to use agents to do that in a very effective way. And it won't be like having a team member, it'll be like having the best team of analysts on the planet in every back office.
Cool.
And I think that's going to be really cool.
Good answer. All right, how about a totally different one? DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, threat to democracy or awesome step in the right direction?
Can I say both again?
Of course, it worked the last time. Sure.
Look, I think, it's like saying you don't want government efficiency is like saying I don't like my mom. Of course, I think government efficiency is a bit of an oxymoron and something you'd love to see.
Yeah.
But, and I'm a firm believer that I've never done a turnaround in anything that you didn't have to break some eggs to really make it happen. And so I like a lot of this. Like, I don't know how else you do it other than go fast and break things, even in these really big orgs. And can see how well it's working by how violently the organization fights against it.
Fair.
But the dangerous part is like you cannot violate the control structure and oversight of the process. Like you can't let and this is true in everything. Like you can't let the positive outcome drive you to overlook everything structural and protections that matter. And so I think they'll figure that out and balance it. But
how about one more? Maritime shipping. We've already reached and passed peak global ocean volumes in human history, or our best days are ahead.
I mean, the idea that we're not going to do more of that seems crazy to me. I mean, my whole view on this is that I think let me make sure I frame this right so it doesn't end up in a weird
We didn't prep
quote.
this one, so heads up.
I'm a firm believer that we need to use less planetary resources per unit of consumption, and that we need to do dramatic improvements in energy and everything else along the way.
Yeah.
I do not believe scarcity is the way you do that. In the same way, I don't think standards is the way you solve data and supply chain. I don't think you solve climate issues by asking people to reduce their standard of living and to expect more out of life. And so I think we will invent ways. I just firmly believe that we will invent ways to accomplish that and still grow. And if you want the rest of the world to progress, they will manufacture things and export things. That is the path of sort of human advancement. And global trade has been probably the biggest single.
I'm with you on all of that.
Enhancement to human life around the planet. And so I just saying there would be less of that feels fundamentally wrong for like humanity. But there's a lot of invention that's required to move to make it to where you can flip from scarcity to abundance and do so sort of on a reduced unit of energy per unit of consumption kind of metric.
One more last question. We've got 1 minute left. And this is really in fairness to the people on LinkedIn who responded, which we had at least a dozen people who know you, who know the history of what you've done at Amazon and are curious, what's Augur? Why and why now? And you've got to do this in 30 seconds.
So I'm a founder now, so I can just say whatever kind of crap I want, right? I can just like.
As a founder, you have your hands up. No,
look, I've been in this profession a long time. This group and the people who do this work every day, I'm very passionate about, and I think the unsung heroes of like making humanity actually work by making and moving the things we consume every day. And I'm honestly just so sick of going to conferences for the last decade and a half and listening to every presentation be data. It's like, this is the year we're going to get data to work. This is the year, and it's all BS. Like we just never do it. And so we're basically building a data infrastructure to extract everything out of existing systems, to be the garbage disposal of a company's data, and then to build the semantic intelligence components of that using LLM and ML to automate that, plus a big corpus of like global supply chain data to make the data interoperable. And then we're going to build application solutions on top of that will leverage over time the agentic pieces that are coming to bear to help make that tie directly back to execution. So
I love it.
We have a big ambitious goal. We just started, so our whole team came together in first week of January. We've got 22 people now, great team, and we're aiming to be out with our MVP in May, June. And
frankly, humble yet compelling analogy. Garbage disposal for data. Get you going. No, I love it. Dave, I wish we had more time. I could do this for a long time, but we can't, so we're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Love the perspective.
Morning.
Hope you guys got something out of that.